When I pulled the data a couple of days ago, there had been about 1,861 homes that had sold in Ottawa so far in 2026. This isn't just listings, this is properties that actually sold. And buried in that number are specific pockets of the market where buyers have real leverage right now, and other pockets where sellers are still mostly in control. I went into our MLS system and I pulled every completed sale in Ottawa so far in 2026, and then broke it out by property type, by price, by how long they sat on the market for, and by how many of those properties failed to sell at all. This is something that I think is worth doing every few months, just kind of stepping back and taking a look at the full picture of what the market is doing. Because it's really easy to get wrapped up in the week-to-week or month-to-month noise. One bidding war in a condo in Westboro and suddenly everybody thinks the market's on fire, or one price drop in a townhouse in Canada and everyone feels like the sky is falling. But when you pull all of the data out and lay it out side by side like we're about to here, the noise kind of falls away a little bit and you can see exactly where the opportunities are and where the potential traps are. Now we'll start by taking a look at what sections of the market are the most popular. And unsurprisingly, the property type we've sold the most of this year so far is detached homes. And this is something we're never that surprised to see because in Ottawa, we are a city that is very much urban sprawl. We build very far out, but we're not as good at building up as a lot of the other big urban centers. And you can see that's reflected. 724, 39% total of all the sales that have happened this year have happened in the detached freehold market. And the second most popular category is the freehold townhouse market, which is the row towns here. Third to that is the condo apartments. So we still have some condo apartments moving, but relative to the number of listings that are there, which we're going to chat about a little bit later in the video, this is pretty small. And then after that, we actually have a good amount of condo townhouses that are selling too. Now for price point, I think it's important to break out the freehold townhouses from the condo townhouses. Condo towns go for, around 400,000 on average. Freehold townhouses go for closer to 600,000. But I like to look at them kind of together when I'm doing these sorts of analysis as well, because the buyer profile for those sorts of properties are very similar. It's usually a young couple who's looking to expand their family and get more space, or it's families looking to move into these sorts of places. Whereas the condo apartment style tends to favor a different sort of lifestyle. Now, if we look at the median sold prices, we can see here condo apartments, the median sold price is $367,000. For condo townhouses, we're up to $390,000, so just under $400,000. So that's pretty much where the intro level to the market is. If you want to get into the market as cheaply as possible, this is the price tag you're going to be paying, is between $350,000 and $400,000. Now you can certainly find cheaper options in both of those price points, but that's where the average is going to land you. And generally, as the price for the condos go down, the monthly condo fees go up. So that's something you'll want to keep in mind as well. Generally, it's better if you can have more of that monthly payment going towards your equity rather than a high condo fee. Freehold townhouses, we're looking at just over $600,000 for the median sale. Semi-detached, $639,000, which makes sense. They tend to sell around the same price as an N-unit townhouse, which are the more expensive townhouses. And then for detached, we're looking at $810,000 for the median price point. Now, from a strictly investment perspective, I find it's usually better if you can get into a freehold property. Those properties tend to hold their value a little bit better and you have more control. When you're dealing with a condo, townhouse, or apartment, you don't have a ton of control over when those condo fees are going to go up, and that can have a negative impact on your property value. But as we can see at the bottom here, there's a huge gap between the condo market and the lower rung of the freehold market. We can see there's a $240,000 gap in purchase price between the average condo apartment and the typical freehold townhouse. So that's something to keep in mind. It's often better to get into a condo apartment or a condo townhouse, probably a condo townhouse, build up some equity in there over time, and then kind of step up to the next step in the property ladder. But there is that risk of the condo fees going up that we just talked about. So that's something to keep in mind as well. If you can get in and stretch to the lower rung of the freehold market, the freehold townhouse, that's often better in the long term, but obviously you're going to have to stretch more financially there. You'll have to make more adjustments to your lifestyle. So that's not the right choice for everybody. Taking a look now at the days on market, we can see that the semi-detached and the attached townhouses are actually performing better than everything else. And to me, this is not too surprising because anybody, first-time buyers especially, who can get into the freehold market, that's generally going to be the choice they make rather than the condo market. And the semi-detached and townhouse market is the most affordable section of that market. It suits the most lifestyles and the most budgets. So we can see that if you're selling a freehold townhouse or a freehold semi-detached, you're in a better position than even if you're selling a detached, although the days on market for detached is not too bad either. But condo townhouses and condo apartments are really suffering, specifically the apartments. And this is where I think it is very important to draw the distinction between a condo townhouse and a condo apartment, because you're looking at a very different list profile when you're going to put your property on the market. A condo townhouse, yeah, it might take you just over a month, but if you price properly, it can be quicker than that. Condo apartments, even if you price properly and even if you get good marketing and that sort of thing, it can be tough. 51 days on market means that there is much more supply than there is demand. So it's going to be much more frustrating when you're heading into listing in that section of the market. There's obviously some risk of buying in that section of the market because a higher days on market, higher months of inventory means prices are generally trending down. But there is lots of opportunity to do a strong negotiation and get yourself a relatively good deal on those sorts of units. But as we can see at the bottom here, condos are taking roughly twice as long to sell as freehold properties, which is really worth paying attention to. Now, terminations is something that I've been looking at more and more lately, but I always like to give the caveat that with terminations, when we're looking at the number of terminations, it is including properties that come off the market and then come back onto the market immediately, effectively just doing a price reduction. So it's important to note this. Detached homes, we're seeing, like 398 terminations on 724 sales. On condo apartments, we're seeing 267 terminations on 304 sales, which is getting pretty close to a 1-to-1 ratio, which is a very shocking number. And it definitely doesn't bode well for the condo section of the market, but it is worth noting that a lot of those are probably people coming off the market and then relisting. So that's still a negative sign for that section of the market because it means people are needing to do these price reductions in order to get them sold. But this doesn't mean 267 distinct addresses are coming off the market and giving up. It means that a lot of them are just price adjusting. But 304 sales on 267 terminations for condo apartments. Condo townhouses, we can see, are kind of somewhere in between, like very similar ratio as with the detached. And again, we see the townhouses and the semi-detached doing pretty much better than the other sections of the market, particularly the condo townhouses when we're looking at terminations versus sales. So we're seeing a lot of those condo townhouses sell once they hit the market and relatively few of them terminating or price adjusting, which is another sign that that section of the market, that more affordable freehold section of the market, is relatively healthy right now. Something else that's worth looking at is the sales to new listings ratio. Now, this performs kind of similar to months of inventory, but instead of comparing the number of listings at the end of the month and dividing it by the number of sales, we're dividing the number of sales by the number of new listings for that month. So it gives us more of a snapshot of what's happening at that specific period of time and shows us less about how much inventory is sitting on the market. Anything over a 60% sales to new listings ratio is considered a seller's market. Anything under 40 is considered a buyer's. And by that criteria, we can see that pretty much every section of the market, with the notable exception of condo apartments, is sitting in balanced market territory. So it's buyers have some leverage, but sellers aren't completely screwed, basically. With condo apartments, though, we are below 40% and we are officially in buyer's market territory from this point of view. And that reflects what we're seeing on the ground. Condos overall are just not doing very well in Ottawa condo apartments. And you can see it's reflected in the sales to list price ratio here. We've got 99% of the sales to list price. So people are getting about 99% of their asking price on average for a townhouse. 98% for the other three sections, and 97% for condo apartments. So people are able to negotiate a bit more money off of the sale price for their condo apartments. And that just reflects, again, that kind of softness in the condo market. So kind of the key takeaways here: townhouses are Ottawa's first-time buyer first choice if they can afford it. Condo townhouses are not included here, but they are usually the second choice for these buyers. But 24% of all transactions that are happening in the freehold townhouse market. The second thing to note is the difference between the entry points. For condos, the median is somewhere in the mid to high 300s, depending on whether you're looking at a townhouse or a apartment condo. and it's over 600,000 to get into the freehold section of the market. So that's barring a lot of would-be first-time townhouse buyers from getting into that section. There's just still not enough inventory in that section of the market, and it's relatively competitive. Freehold properties we can see are moving very well relative to the condo section. We're seeing a median days on market between 19 and 23 days. So the average freehold property is selling within a month. Condos are taking twice as long to do that. Condo terminations are alarming, but again, take into consideration that this also counts the properties that are coming off the market and then coming back on right away to reduce their price. So it's not as alarming as the number would make it seem on its face, but it's still definitely a strong signal that we are in a big buyer's market when it comes to apartment condos. And that pretty much covers off on the last point. We're in a buyer's market for condos. That's been the case for the last year or two. It is still the case in the first part of 2026. So the bottom line here is Ottawa's market is not just one market, it's several different markets. If you're looking at detached or townhomes in the freehold market in the right areas, things are actually moving. The median days on market is in the low 20s, and we have a relatively balanced supply. Condos are a completely different story. You got a longer days on market, a much weaker absorption, and a termination rate that tells you that close to half of the listings aren't getting it done, although again, a lot of them are coming off the market and then coming back on right away. That's where the opportunity is if you're a buyer looking in that section of the market. You got more selection, more negotiating power, and an entry-level price point in the high 300s that's genuinely workable for a lot of first-time buyers. Now, the risk you're taking is that section of the market is showing signs that it could go down further. We never know exactly when that's going to turn around, but it's worth noting that that is a distinct possibility. If you are buying in the condo market, it's important you prioritize things like good location, a good floor plan that's functional, not necessarily just newer or, like a nice kitchen, that sort of thing. A lot of the newer condos have very small floor plans that are not translating well, and they're having a lot of trouble selling those units right now. I'm going to keep pulling this data on at least like a quarterly basis, so definitely get subscribed to the channel if that's something that's of interest to you. If you have any questions about what's going on in your section of the market, never be shy to reach out. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful rest of your day.